Thank you, Tom. Great job. Thank you. Rod, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under your leadership, Attorney General Sessions has made violent crime and illegal immigration a top priority for the Department of Justice, and we're making tremendous progress. We're working in coordination with Homeland Security and with our other federal partners, as well as state and local law enforcement. The feedback that we're getting, as Tom mentioned, around the country is that state and local law enforcement appreciate their partnership. It's an unprecedented level of coordination with federal law enforcement around the country, particularly on this challenge of violent crime and MS-13. John mentioned that some of the recent cases, the horrific cases we've handled in the Department of Justice. I saw this firsthand when I was U.S. Attorney in Maryland in 2005. We began using federal racketeering statutes to try to dismantle the MS-13 gang. And we had tremendous success for quite a few years. But we found in recent years a resurgence of MS-13 in Maryland and the D.C. area, and it was fueled by illegal immigration and particularly by the challenge of unaccompanied minor children. And there are several loopholes in federal law that facilitate this, that create a particular problem for Homeland Security and for us with regard to unaccompanied children who enter the United States illegally. The first is that they are not eligible for expedited removal, which means that most aliens who enter the United States, if they're caught within 14 days, within about 100 miles of the border, they can be removed on an expedited basis without needing to see an immigration judge. But under federal law, all unaccompanied alien children, regardless of nationality, they have to go before a judge. They cannot be subject to expedited removal proceedings. The second challenge is that almost all unaccompanied children are released from custody, even if they want to go home. And the reason for that is that there's an exception for aliens from Mexico and Canada. They're permitted to withdraw their applications and return home. But for other countries, even if those aliens request to go home, we're not allowed to do it. We're required to put them in immigration proceedings. And in addition to that, Homeland Security is required to turn them over to HHS within 72 hours as a result of federal law. It can take months and sometimes years to adjudicate those claims once they get into the federal immigration court system, and they often fail to appear for immigration proceedings. In fact, approximately 6,000 unaccompanied children each year fail to appear. When they've been summoned, they're released and they don't show up again. The third challenge is a consent decree entered by the government in 1997, which continues to burden our efforts to enforce immigration laws. Under that consent decree, INS at the time agreed that illegal alien children would be subject to special rules, special judicial supervision that handicaps DHS's ability to detain and promptly remove unaccompanied alien children. And the fourth challenge that we face is that once released, as you mentioned, many of them never come back again. With very few exceptions, once those unaccompanied alien children are released into the community, even if they're gang members, they will generally remain in the United States. They frequently abscond and fail to appear for the removal hearings. Approximately 90% of all removal orders each year result from a failure to appear at a hearing. And according to Homeland Security statistics, less than 4% of illegal alien children are ultimately removed from the United States. So most of them, once they're released, they're here to stay. The consequence of these loopholes, Mr. President, is that although we're doing everything we can to combat crime in the United States, we're letting people in who are creating problems. We're letting people in who are gang members. We're also letting people in who are vulnerable. Many of these alien children who have no parents, no family structure, we're releasing them into communities where they're vulnerable to recruitment by MS-13. And so some of these kids who come in without any gang ties develop gang ties as a result of the pressure that they face from people that they confront in the community. So we're hopeful, Mr. President, that we can get some assistance from the Congress in closing some of these loopholes so that our law enforcement officers won't have to work so hard, and so we won't have more victims like Kayla and Issa. Thank you.
I think that's great, Rod, and I think it's happening. I mean, I'm seeing a willingness, even to a certain extent by the Democrats, is starting to come around, but it's brutal. It's brutal, as you know better than anybody. It's a tough situation. We need the laws enhanced very substantially and very quickly. Thank you, Rod, very much. Very nice. Patrick.
Mr. President, first of all, on behalf of all our Nassau County police officers, and I think I could speak for every officer in this room and in this country, we know we have a president that has our back and supports us every single day when we go out and do the mission that we are tasked to do. We have about 500 identified MS-13 members in Nassau County. About 250 of them are active. And we do that through everything is evidence-based and through intelligence-led policing. Last year in 2017, we had 6 kids that were murdered in Nassau County by MS-13. Of those 6, 1 was shot in the face, 1 was shot in the back of the head, 4 of them were violently butchered by machetes and buried in shallow graves throughout our county. Those victims, 3 of them were 15 years of age. 2 of them were 18. Out of the 6 people that committed these murders, 9 people were arrested last year. 7 of the 9 that were arrested were undocumented in this country. So we have a population of 1.3 million people here in Nassau County. 17% Hispanic makeup. I've been to these communities, I've spoken to these people, I've addressed them at town hall meetings, and our pop cops have been there. They're good, hard-working people in the community. 90% of the crime is done by 10% of the population. MS-13 is making up a good percent of that 10% in that community. We need to go out at an intelligent way to attack it. We need to go out with evidence-based approaches. What I would like to see here in Nassau County, we have a great partnership with Homeland. We have a great partnership with ICE. They've done nothing but support us. Our U.S. Attorney's Office and our District Attorney's Office has been great in their prosecutions. We need to get a little bit better on our intelligence sharing and information, and that starts at the border, where that information can flow up to the states, that we know who, why, when, how. And again, that gives us a better way to approach it, so we don't burn the bridges and the relationships with those communities that we spent so much time building, that they want to come to us and support us. And the youth programs in those communities, whether it's a police youth academy, a PAL program, they're the kids that are being influenced and turned into the gangs, as you heard before. They're the kids that we need to reach now, not later, now, before some of these gang members push them into it. Most of the murders that have occurred here in Nassau County were done because somebody wanted to get into the gang, and part of the initiation was to take a body. And these are innocent kids that are out there lured into these wooded areas with alcohol and the potential of sex and drugs. If our intelligence is better, if our evidence-based approach is better, and our community relations stay strong, we can make a difference and turn the tide on that. And that we're going to look to you for all that help, sir.
Thank you very much, Brad. That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you. Great job. Very good. You've done a fantastic job. Robert and Elizabeth, we're going to save you for a couple of minutes. We want to hear from a couple of these politicians first, right? And then we're going to get to the real story. We appreciate it. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'd remind you, we're public servants, we're not politicians. But thank you for your leadership here. This is our second visit. This is our second visit here to Nassau County. It's the second time that through your leadership you came here, because this community is hurting. Behind you is a sign that says, secure our borders, protect our communities. That's one sentence with a comma in it. If we do one, we achieve the other. And it's the one thing that you've been trying to do for the 15 months that you've led this nation. We need border security. We need tougher immigration laws. We need to help communities like this. The examples, I was a prosecutor for 20 years, Mr. President. I was 8 years in the Manhattan DA's office. I was deputy chief of the Narcotics Bureau, where we saw vicious gang assaults and murders. I was 12 years as the Staten Island District Attorney, as you know. I have never seen the viciousness like you just described in your opening remarks. We're here to help. These brave people, Pat, John, Rod, the folks on the ground, they're enforcing laws, but we have to make the laws. And we learned a lot by listening. That's why I'm so grateful that you're holding this roundtable, because a lot of what Lee, Pete, and I will do when we go back to D.C. is take the information we learn here and implement them into our laws. On the way up with you, the Secretary is describing to us how after a criminal is convicted and they're illegal, if their home country doesn't take them back in 6 months, we have to release them back in the community. Well, what country would take back these people that our fellow crime fighters have just described? Nobody would take them back. We have to change those laws, Mr. President. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment to protect our nation. And thank you for your support of our law enforcement officers.
Good. Thank you very much, Dan. And thank you, Dan. Just before we get to the Secretary, I have to say that many of these countries we give tremendous amounts of aid to, tens of millions of dollars. And we're working on a plan to deduct a lot of the aid, because I happen to believe that it's not so hard. You know, they'll let you think that they're trying to stop this. They're not trying to stop it. I think they encourage people from leaving. They don't want the people that we're getting in that country. So we're going to work out something where every time somebody comes in from a certain country, we're going to deduct a rather large amount of money from what we give them in aid, if we give them aid at all, which we may not just give them aid at all, because despite all of the reports I hear, I don't believe they're helping us one bit. And maybe that's the way life is, but they're not helping us a lot based on the fact that we know where these people are coming from. So we're looking at our whole aid structure, and it's going to be changed very radically. It's already started. All right? Thank you.